Up next, the Cyberian Times met with United Nations Special Representative Rosemary Cliff. Viewers know that the United Nations has recently become a lightning rod of controversy and criticism in the wake of the damning reports from Camp 7, the dismantled peace negotiations, and the ensuing violence in Rhinania. We discussed all this and more. Stay tuned. Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
I have a few questions about the recent controversy with regard to the United Nations, prospects for the continued negotiations, and perhaps a retrospective analysis as to perhaps why the initial peace negotiations have failed.
I'm sorry about that. I'm very busy.
The New York Times reported in April that despite finding evidence of mass graves that contain the remains of hundreds or even thousands of missing Saharians, the UN refrained from releasing the report of Camp 7. They reported that 25,000 men and women and children were held in crowded conditions with minimal heat and sanitation facilities. So please tell me why there was this cover-up, and what have you done so far to remedy the situation?
I mean, I would first take a bit of issue with your language here. I wouldn't say that it was a cover-up.
Okay.
I think as most of your listeners would have to understand, until I could get a full report, when the camp was no longer under the control of the government of Rhinania, we were unable to conduct interviews with the people who were living in the camp. So until I was able to get a full report by the Human Rights Commission here at the UN, I didn't feel comfortable making comment because I wanted to have all the facts in front of me. And as I'm sure most of your listeners have seen earlier this month, I released a very strongly worded statement condemning the atrocities that went on at Camp 7.
The New York Times seems to imply that there was a cover-up, that the report was available, that this information was on hand, but the United Nations failed to release it.
Right. I mean, there was a report that came, but it was not a full report. And until I had conducted a full investigation, I did not feel comfortable releasing a statement that perhaps did not cover the entire breadth of what we had discovered.
All right. And so what is going on with Camp 7 currently?
At this point, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees is administering aid to the people who've decided to remain in the camp, which is the vast majority of the Saharians there. The conditions have much improved since the United Nations peacekeepers took over and the government of Rhinania left. At this point, I've had to pass over any investigation to the international community. As the SRSG, I have absolutely no power in terms of international indictments or anything like that. Of course, I've urged the community to prosecute these offenses to the full extent of international law, but as I said, it's out of my hands at this point.
And what about the UN report of Camp 9? When will this be available, and can we expect similar results?
Right. At this point, the government of Rhinania has changed their mind about turning Camp 9 over to the United Nations for a similar investigation as we conducted at Camp 7. So at this point, there will be no formal investigation forthcoming. What I can say is we received similar reports recently from Camp 9 outlining conditions that may be similar to what occurred at Camp 7, but I need to make it clear that this is not an official investigation, and I can't confirm or deny exactly what has gone on there.
Okay. So what can you do right now? What can the UN do right now to protect Saharians against human rights abuses?
At this point, the only thing that I can do as the SRSG, I have no power over these actors, obviously. All I can do is urge them to come back to the table. Until the fighting stops, there's very little that we can do to protect anybody. So my only power at this point is diplomatic power to say that the violence isn't solving anything, it's only hurting people, and the only way that we're going to move past this and achieve retribution for any crimes that have taken place is through a...
Well, you've given me a seamless segue into my next question. What are the prospects for a new agreement, and have you approached negotiations differently than, say, 2 months ago?
At this point, I'm in contact with both sides, trying to bring them back to the table, as well as any other parties in the region who are willing to negotiate in good faith towards a peace agreement. I don't want people at the table who are not willing to negotiate. Every side is going to have to make concessions in a peace deal, but I would like to stress that it's not just the government of Rhinania and the PFLZ who I want to come back to the table. The strategy at this point is just to get all sides talking instead of acting out in violence to try to solve their differences.
And how come previously, when constructing the first agreement, you did not choose to contact the ZPF?
I had contacted them. I think it's important to make clear, contrary to interviews that the ZPF has given to the Cyberian Times in the past, that I did contact them on the first day, the first month that I arrived. Any indications that I got from the ZPF was that they were not willing to negotiate in good faith, and I had to go forward with parties who were willing to meet. They have since indicated that perhaps they are willing to speak with the international community on a level that would indicate that they're willing to negotiate in good faith, in which case, if that is the case and they would like to come to the table, I see no reason why they could not be included in a peace process pending the agreement of other members who have agreed to that peace process.
All right. And the New York Times actually criticized the United Nations for sending peacekeepers in the midst of a tenuous agreement. What is your response to the New York Times with regard to your decision?
I would say that the implementation of the mission resulted in our ability to take over control of Camp 7, therefore bringing to light the atrocities that had taken place there. So while I absolutely admit that it's not the most conventional way that a peacekeeping mission has been enacted, I have taken it personally upon myself to ensure that every action possible is taken to ensure the safety of the UNOBRI soldiers who are bravely serving in Brynania to try to bring some semblance of peace and security.
And CNN has recently reported that the U.S. government is considering a bailout for the Brynanian government. What is your opinion about this?
I can't comment on the decisions of other governments. Of course, as a diplomat, my only job is to try to bring the different parties back to the table, and I can't make comment on the foreign policy of other countries.
Well, how do you think this is going to affect the peace process?
I think that the government, if they're unable to continue fighting and if they are unable to have the funds available to them to continue fighting, they may choose peace. But like I said, at this point I can't make any comment on specificities of any kind of agreement made between individual actors.
So essentially the United Nations is now waiting for the government to run out of funds to stop fighting before you think negotiations will continue?
I hope that that's not the case. I hope that it doesn't become a monetary issue. I hope that all sides at this point who are engaging in violence realize that violence is not going to solve anything in the long term. The only way to move past the conflict in Brynania towards peace in all of equatorial cyberspace is going to be peace negotiations.
And what incentives are the United Nations providing for both sides to come to the table?
I mean, at this point, there's very little that I can offer, as I don't have anything in my power to give. All I can say is that I will provide a safe space where these actors can have their voices heard, and that I'm not on the side of any one actor. I'm on the side of the people of Brynania and bringing safety back to their lives.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our viewers at Cyberian Times?
I don't think so. I think that the most important thing at this point is to try to continue to evaluate the ongoing conflict in Brynania with a level head, and not be swept away by any propaganda that any side may be putting forward, but to think logically about the best way to reach peace in Brynania, which is not violent means.
Okay. Well, thank you. Once again, we'd like to thank Rosemary Cook for meeting with us. Stay tuned for more captivating and gripping news regarding the Brynanian Civil War. Thank you. This is Nandi Anand signing out.